What's going on, everyone? Talnot here. I wanted to make a video on Instagram again. I realized the last one that I made got a kind of a surprising amount of attention considering I didn't promote it. I didn't, I don't have that many subscribers. I was kind of surprised by the viewership that it got, and I was disappointed in myself because it was not a good video. It was kind of a shit video. So I was like, well, if people are gonna come watch these videos, why not make it fucking valuable, right? Why not make it something that people would be interested in learning from, something that people would be interested in watching? So I wanted to kind of make another one, maybe actually write something down, not just, speak off the top of my head, something like that. But this is just kind of going to be the basics for me on, my thought process when approaching Instagram growth and Instagram as kind of creating a piece of leverage, a piece of power for you to grow, monetarily, influentially, kind of all over. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start by talking about making the account, start from the basics. I think the important thing to think about when you're making an account is, essentially you're trying to sell something, right? I mean, if you're let's take an example of you're starting like a gaming YouTube channel or something like that. Like, you want to obviously make the account centered around video games, gaming, culture, news, stuff like that, and you want to keep it consistent to that theme. You want to keep it thematically consistent. It's very important to take into consideration the thought process that you are here to sell something, right? Like, you are selling, yourself, your channel. If you're trying to just grow your personal channel to become like what's called like an Instagram influencer, you can eventually do like paid content, sponsored content, stuff like that. That can be a way to grow. That's very valid. But in that situation, you're selling yourself. So always keep in mind what you're selling, and keep the content thematically centered around whatever that is. Keeping in mind the idea of selling on Instagram, I think if the posts and the content that will make you money eventually, once you've grown large enough, something I think is very important to do is, if that could be seen as very like salesy, as a lot of people say, don't come out with that right out the gate. Wait a while. Do solely post content that will help you grow. And then once you've gotten to a certain level, then you can kind of split the content a little bit. I like the 80-20 rule. Eventually, once you've gotten large enough, this is not right out the gate, do 80% content that helps grow your channel, grow your account, grow your personality, your influence, and then 20% goes to, whatever it is that's going to be making you money. Do the thing that's you're selling, whether that be yourself or like looking for sponsorships, or your links to your YouTube videos or your streams, or your products, your ebooks, whatever it is you're selling. I think the 80-20 rule is a good thing to follow, eventually. And if it's subtle, that's not a big deal. If you've got like a brand sponsorship, and it's, if it's like a supplement company that's paying you to be a brand ambassador or something like that, if the picture is of you, working out, and you've got like a, little thing next to you, that's not really a big deal. That's not like in your face. But if it's going to be kind of in your face, wait a bit, and then don't make it every other post. Don't do that. Don't flood with, your sales content. Now I kind of want to touch on the posts themselves. And the first thing that I want to get out of the gate is, post once a day, at least. And I think, I say at least very kind of thinly. Be very aware of your audience. Be very aware of who you're, trying to contact and trying to influence. Because I think it's safe to say, and I think it's very safe to say, almost 100% of people that are trying to grow something on Instagram, sell something, can benefit by posting once a day. Once a day is a good goal to shoot for. Beyond that, like, I have my gaming channel, or my gaming account on Instagram. I post twice a day on that one. I think that's a fine community. That community is fine with being almost flooded with content. The more, like, it doesn't really get in their face, that's probably all they're following anyways. So it's like one more is not gonna hurt per day. So I post twice a day, but If you know if the content is all focused on you and it's like your face or something like that, or stuff that you're doing, maybe once a day is what's right. You don't want to flood people, especially new followers that aren't necessarily engaged with you yet. You don't want to flood them with stuff and kind of scare them off. So or annoy them is a bigger one. So I think once a day is a good goal, and then from there, kind of think about your community. Think about does this make sense to do more? Additionally, with the things you post, hashtags are obviously very important. I think it can be a bit tacky to flood your post with hashtags. I kind of do that for gaming, because there's so many hashtags that can apply, and people I don't think really care too much. But if somebody's looking and somebody's a bit more sensitive to the aesthetic of the post, you're doing artistic photography or food or in fitness, something like that, I think people can be a bit more influenced and impressioned by just a flood of hashtags. So I think my ideal is 3. I think if you do 3 hashtags per post, that can be really good. On top of that, it's important to use the best hashtags possible. Now, for me, I use a site, and I'll talk about this a little bit more too. I use a site called Websta, websta.me. And Websta is a really great app, a website. It's got really good tools. There are some better ones out there, but they're more paid. Websta is a free service that gives you a certain level of analytics. Again, they're not the most in-depth analytics. It's not the best, but any analytics can help. And I'll cover analytics a little bit more, but the first thing that I want to talk about in relation to hashtags is that Websta has a tab that shows you the best the most active hashtags and the most posts that are being posted under those hashtags. And I think sometimes it can be really good. I think sometimes that can get you followers to post along with everybody else. I think shooting kind of in the middle isn't ideal. A lot of times the middle ground on the hashtags that are getting posted to that are very currently active are very good and will get the most engaged eyes. I think if you go for the most posted hashtags, what you're going to get there are a lot of bots and a lot of other accounts that are trying to grow. They'll follow you and then unfollow you. And I'll talk about that at the end as well. But I think that is, shoot for currently active hashtags that are not being flooded. I think that's kind of the thing to go for. And you can kind of achieve that through Websta. Keeping in the vein of Websta, Websta also gives you certain analytics on the time of day that you posted. You can also look at your most popular posts, and pay attention to these things. If you see if I post at 2 p.m. Every weekday, those get the most likes. I'm going to post every day at 2 p.m. That's going to be the time that I post. Being consistent on time can be a big deal. If people are used to kind of seeing your posts in the morning or the afternoon, it can matter. It can matter. So it's something to pay attention to, and using a third-party app like Websta can really help you do that. And again, real quick, this is not paid. I'm not endorsing Websta. It does the job, and it does the job pretty well for free. There's a lot of other apps that do great work out there and similar work, but a lot of them are paid. Websta gives you a limited amount of information for free. That's why I'm kind of talking about it. Now, the final thing that I kind of wanted to touch on that I briefly mentioned was, accounts that will kind of follow for, the sake of getting your attention. We've all probably seen it. If you have a personal Instagram account, you've probably been followed by some account that's trying to grow. This is not a good strategy. I don't think it's going to get you the most engaged audience. I don't think it's a long-term strategy. And I think, first off, you run the risk of, Instagram is very strict on its marketing, bots and stuff like that. If you follow too many people in a day or unfollow too many people a day, that sends off flags at Instagram, and you can have your account suspended. I had my gaming account suspended briefly for something similar. That's kind of when I woke up to this isn't working anyways. Why am I doing this? Again, it can get you brief attention, but it's not engaged users. And engaged users are the ones that are going to buy your product or be, engaged on your other platforms, stuff like that. Doing the follow for follow kind of stuff is not going to get you long-term attention in that way. So I think that's something very important to consider. And I think it's very tacky, especially if you go to like an account that has 3,000 followers, but then you see that they have they're following 5,000 people. It's like, all right, I see the consistency of your posting and everything. So I get what you're trying to do. It's very obvious. It's painfully obvious. You don't want to make things obvious on your channel. A lot of times it will be, but I think it's a point of tackiness. I guess kind of in conclusion, an important thing to consider is that this is a long process to get the best value out of Instagram. It's not going to happen overnight necessarily. Instagram doesn't have, big blow up pictures or anything. Sometimes you do. Sometimes I have posts on my gaming account that, get 3 or 4 times the likes that my average likes, and those sometimes will get me a flood of followers. But for the most part, it's not going to be explosive. It's going to be long-term, consistent. Use apps to I think one thing that's very important that I should have probably talked about earlier is queuing up posts and scheduling posts. I use an app called Crowdfire, and I'll link that down below as well. I'll link everything down that I've mentioned. I think scheduling posts so that you can be consistent. Scheduling a post helps you be consistent, and consistency is one of the most important things on Instagram. So definitely do that, and keep in mind the overall aesthetic of the account. Think about if you're thinking about doing something new, think about all right, how's it gonna look if someone new pops in on the account and they're just scrolling through my stuff? Is it gonna look tacky? Is it gonna look bad? You're gonna have to balance that. Keep the 80-20 rule in mind. Don't make everything salesy. Don't be salesy right off the bat. Just focus on growth. Focus on growing. And eventually you will, keep the quality of the content there. Don't always post the exact same thing. Mix it up a bit, but keep them thematically in line with each other. And I guess that's about it. Keep everything. I keep saying it, but keep things consistent and reach out. I'll do a video after this about Instagram DMs. That's gonna be the next Instagram video that I do. Alright, so yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. I hope this was a little more valuable than the last BS video that I did. And yeah, I have some other stuff that I want to talk about. I'll probably do follow-ups in other videos, so keep in tune for that. I'll probably mention other little things. Even just talking about this, I've thought about other stuff I want to mention about Instagram. I'll do those later. So if you want to see those, make sure to subscribe. So thank you.